Hey everyone, Luke here. For those of you who've been following our channel for a while now, you may have noticed that it's been a while since we've last posted. As you can imagine, a lot of this has been related to COVID and how that's impacted traveling. But believe it or not, we actually did travel quite a bit even during this COVID experience, where travel, as you can imagine, is quite different than it typically is. And I wanted to kind of just catch you guys up on what we've been doing for the past few months, as well as give you an idea of some other videos to look forward to in the near future. So let's dive in. Let's start off with the last day of July, which was our last day of work in Maidstone, located in the south of England. We literally finished our day of work with our bags in hand and headed straight to the train station because we had plans to visit the Isle of Wight. The Isle of Wight is a really pretty English island, just south of the rest of Great Britain. The next day we did have to get up pretty early because we had a hovercraft booked to get to the Isle of Wight. This was one of the reasons why we chose to go through Portsmouth and not another city, because there are a couple other towns that you can access Isle of Wight from, but we really wanted the experience of taking the hovercraft because it's one of the few remaining hovercrafts that run, definitely in the UK and I think possibly in the world. It's also extremely quick. It only took like 15 minutes or so, I think. So a really fast, great way to get to the Isle of Wight is by hovercraft from Portsmouth. Upon arriving in the Isle of Wight, we ended up taking a bus to the city of Sandown, which is where our hotel was located. Once we dropped our bags off at this hotel, we had rental bikes dropped off at the property, which was really nice. From our hotel, we rode to the Red Squirrel Path, which is a path that you can take, taking you from Sandown to the town of God's Hill. We didn't end up taking the entire path to God's Hill, and instead we deviated towards the coast. We found Red Squirrel Path really flat and pleasant to ride, but once we left the path, we did find that it got a bit hillier, and unfortunately you started to lose the dedicated bike paths and you had to share the road with cars. Eventually we ended up stopping at Compton Bay, and at this point we decided we had had enough of the bikes, so we ended up ditching the bikes and getting them picked up by the bike company and decided to do the rest by foot, which we found was a bit more comfortable. But before that, we decided to stop for some ice cream at this really scenic, beautiful outlook on the coast. And we were really so grateful that we had such a beautiful day, such a beautiful view, and this was a really great start to our trip. In the end, we were actually really happy that we decided to switch from bike to going by foot because we found that we were able to really take our time exploring. And the highlight of the excursion for us between Compton Bay and the Needles was the walk that we did itself rather than the final destination, the Needles. We actually found just the journey to get to the Needles was actually a lot more rewarding than the actual views that you get from the Needles. It took us about 2 to 2.5 hours, but it was a really pleasant walk. Beautiful weather. We were literally pinching ourselves that it was this warm and pleasant in England. When you live in England, you really grow to appreciate when you have beautiful sunny days like this. We arrived at the Needles and took some photos and took a look at some of the views, and then we decided to head back by taking what's called the Needles Breezer, which is this bus that takes you to some of the major sites between Needles and some of the major towns in this part of the island. On this Needles Breezer, we took it to the nearest town, which was Yarmouth, and we decided to stop there and have dinner and some pints to celebrate our first night on our trip. If you do go to Yarmouth, check out the King's Head. We had a really delicious fish and chips dinner and great local pints. The next day, we bought a day pass, which for us was extremely reasonable and worth it because it was only £12 per person and it got you unlimited rides on the bus system throughout the island for the entire day. So we definitely got our money's worth. From Sandown, we took the bus to the city of Cowes. This is a really cute town with a really scenic esplanade walk and lovely water views. After experiencing Cowes, we took the bus again to the town of Shanklin, which had a really cute historic downtown and also had really lovely thatched roofed houses to enjoy. If you like the really cute, charming, historic vibe that a lot of English towns have, this is a perfect example of it. From town, we headed to what's called Shanklin Chine, which is this 200-year-old gorge with a green, lush atmosphere. We felt like we entered a different world when we walked into this because it actually reminded us of the atmosphere of the Pacific Northwest from when we had lived in Seattle a few years back. And it felt like we had left England entirely and had this beautiful green trees everywhere around us. You also get great views of the beach, which kind of looked more tropical. So it was a really interesting mix of Pacific Northwest-like vibes with the lush greenery, but also tropical views in the distance. So we loved it. We felt like we were on a different planet entirely. From here, we headed to our final destination of the day, which is a town called Ventnor. Ventnor is a really cute place to visit, especially if you like waterfront beachy vibes and nice hilly walks that allow for great hilltop views of the beach and the surrounding area. So we just really enjoyed walking around, people watching, and enjoying the beautiful surroundings. The next morning, we checked out of the hotel and headed for the hoverport, where we were able to take the hovercraft back to Portsmouth. Once we arrived in Portsmouth, we had a couple hours to kill before our train was scheduled to go to the town of New Haven. We decided to use this time to our advantage and explore some of the city of Portsmouth. We dropped our bags off at a local cafe that we found through an app called Radical Storage, which is an app that lets you drop your bags off at different local establishments for a small fee, just for a few hours. Our first stop was to visit the Old Town. Some of the coastal parts of the city also have this historic defensive wall that was there to protect the city in older times when they were regularly under attack. But unfortunately, some parts of the historic dockyard were closed due to COVID, which is something to be aware of when you're traveling during COVID, is you kind of have to roll with when certain things are closed due to concerns about limited social distancing. Other areas that we visited in Portsmouth included the Portsmouth Cathedral and the Royal Garrison Church. We went back to pick up our bags and headed towards the train station, which happens to be in the area around University of Portsmouth. We took our train to our accommodations in the city of New Haven. We walked from the train station to our hostel, which is called the YHA South Downs, because this is in the South Downs area of Sussex. We enjoyed just having drinks and dinner at our hostel and soaked in our last few moments in England, because the next day we were headed for a ferry to France. That will be a topic that we'll cover in our next video though, where I take you through our experience of taking the ferry from this region of England to the Normandy region of France. So stay tuned for that. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for further content. Hope to see you at our next video. Bye!